Okay, so Postman elaborates on 6 or 7 narratives that he thinks are constructive directions away from the economic utility and the consumptive approach in education, and also away from ostensible purposes like, this satisfying of a desire of an external source merely, maybe it's a parent or someone else, in order to kind of showcase a presentation of the outcome of one's participation in learning, which of course is also related to the notion of grade acquisition and having a presentation of those grades in abstract form show up in a later transcript. He's getting away from these things, rather talking about education in terms of transformation of the individual mind, right? So I want to discuss one of these narratives primarily, although it does kind of tie in with another of his narratives, but he calls it the idea of the fallen angel. So I talked earlier about Postman's idea that a number of common characteristics and themes may emerge out of a valuable narrative, and one of those characteristics is the possibility of addressing contradiction. So in the juxtaposition of terms in the name of this narrative, we have contradiction, right? So fallen is implying the continual fallibility and folly of human activities, but angel has a more, not necessarily pure, but this kind of ability, not inevitability though, for humans to, in a sense, go back on the very stupid things that they've done and to conceive differently, helpful and creative ways to mold things a little bit differently. And he says this notion of fallibility is largely tied up in the human desire to conceal knowledge in such a way as to attempt to make it a fixed thing, or have it be defined by a fixed kind of nature. So this is the dogmatic roadblock to continual inquiry, right? But at the same time, at the other side of this is the kind of dangerous fall, perhaps equally dogmatic fall, into a kind of egotistical solipsism, which says that I'm here, the rest of the world's out there, I'm going to do whatever I want so long as it doesn't bug anyone else, and everyone else can do what they want so long as it doesn't bug me, right? Because this views the self as a kind of boxed in controller who somehow supersedes any non-selfly correspondence of interdependence, whether it be socially or environmentally. Right? So tied in with this discussion of absolute knowledge is the emphasis in many high schools on memorizing bolded terms. Maybe this idea is changing, but since, when I was in high school, this was certainly a huge emphasis, this kind of rigid idea of getting a set mind of what the definition of a word is. But rather, Postman says educators can emphasize the malleability and the ambiguity of knowledge as it changes through time and as it changes through perspective. And he says that in order to help students do this, educators can also emphasize a kind of meta-language in their learning in order for them to see, kind of the vast difference between what a definition is and means and what the definition of a word is or means, where the definition is something that implies extremely strict boundaries on the purpose of the idea that definition is representing, and when presenting a definition, educators can keep in mind that there is leeway to interpreting ideas. for different approaches, right? So this is the kind of basis for the understanding of this narrative. It's to foster a sense of identity through an awareness of language, and also within this meta language is something quite similar, and it's to historicize subjects and topics. And he quotes William James here in saying that being able to have a historical perspective on a topic is giving humanity to that topic. It's humanizing the topic. So Postman gives the example of a molecule. So, okay, students can learn a general definition of a molecule, but this cannot be considered, reiterating this definition verbatim cannot be considered the pinnacle of their understanding of a molecule, of course. They need to make that the starting point of their inquiry. So all kinds of questions can come from learning a general definition, right? Can we see molecules? If we can't see them, what kind of knowledge is the molecule wrapped up in? How did ancients think about atoms? How was Democritus conceiving atoms? How do modern scientists conceive of subatomic particles, which is similar or different from how Democritus was thinking of atoms? Okay? So Postman's saying that through questions like this, it becomes quite evident that responses through time change to these questions, and then it would become accordingly obvious that knowledge about them changes as well. Okay.